Hi, this is Gilles, the radio prepper. You know, I've been neglecting solar power and other sources of power for my radios. Now, of course, in a prepping situation, you need to be sure to be able to recharge your batteries. And for that, I have a small solar panel that is a 14 watt panel, but only charges USB. Now, I use that to charge 18 650 cells one at a time. Actually, I have two little chargers. They are the UM10, Nightcore UM10. But I needed something a little bit bigger. The problem is that I really don't have the money to get one of those hyper flexible panels from the US. It's just so expensive. Of course, the performance is there, but I can't spend $500 or more on a panel. But still, I needed a panel that could provide 18-20 volts that I could use with an Mppt charger to charge again 18650 cells, but 3 at a time. And I thought, well, I used to have a 7 watt panel, and that was not enough. You could charge a few AA cells and maybe one of those old cell phones, and at the time I bought it, 7 watts was okay. Today it certainly isn't. So my 14 watt panel almost does it. Almost. So I decided to get a 20 watt panel. Now I could have gone with a cheap Chinese, $50, $30 panel, but I didn't quite want to take the risk. And also I wanted something that was a little bit more protected, that you could fold and transport easily. Now, it's not very easy to find panels in the 20 to 30 watt range that does 20 volts. Most of them only offer a USB charging, which is 5 volts. I did find one, just got it, and that's the Power Traveler. It's a Falcon 21. Now this panel is pretty cool. It has 3 7 watt panels. And it does provide 5 USB charging, but also 18 volt 20 volt output, which you can use with a charge controller.
Of course, they are all made in China, and I knew that was going to be the case, but I bought this from the UK, and I thought quality control would be there.
The box comes with a bunch of adapters, and most important for me is this one, because that's what I can also use to charge my laptop computer. That's for a Lenovo. Now you can see here there's a bunch of them, all different sizes, and that's pretty cool. That's mostly for laptops probably. You do get a USB cable, standard micro USB, and you get also, very important, a DC connector cable, same plug on each side. And this is the standard for QRP radios, so that's pretty awesome. And I will be able to charge not only my 18650 cells, and I'll show you the Mppt charger I'm going to use, but also with the USB cable I can charge my USB power bank. And you get also a 12 volt adapter here. Now I would think that there is a voltage limiter in there, because of course 18-20 volts is quite a bit, although probably if you add a load it would lower, but you could fry something potentially if this doesn't have a voltage regulator, which I'm going to check.
The presumably Mppt charger I'm going to use is this one. Now I say presumably because of course the Chinese will sell you stuff, will lie to you and sell you things that are not what they say they are. The reference is BCP B2, and it's made by Wondom, Wondom, I think. I found it on eBay, and if I can find it I'll put the seller in the description. Now, the particularity of this charger is that it's made for 3 18650 cells. And that's awesome, because that's what I use. So I can charge 3 cells at a time. I get 12.6 volts total, and that's perfect for most of my radios. Now, if I was charging other batteries like gel cell or anything like that, or even other chemistries, I would use a Genesen charger. charge controller. I used to have 2 of them on my boat. Of course, I lost the boat. And those chargers were awesome. But this one, I don't know how it's going to perform. Of course, I'm going to test it. But if it does what it says it does, you know, that's going to be pretty cool. Now, what I want to do is to, because this didn't come with a box. So what I want to do is get a 3D printer and print a cover that will come here on the bottom and cover all this and go about, you know, 3 millimeters above the circuit board here. And I'll glue it all around. Now the only hole that I'm going to have to make is for the here, for the power input from the solar panel. Now the output is, I think it's here, and here or here, and that's where you get your power out. And I'm gonna have to make holes for the wires here too, but that's not such a big deal. And if I can do that, I'll have a fairly, well, you know, not watertight, but water resistant 18650 holder with a built-in Mppt charger. What I use to create the box is a website called Tinkercad, and I've never used a CAD program before, but I've already made the box here. Went ahead of myself. To create the box, you basically create a solid box, then you create a second box which is a void basically, and you lower it into the solid one. Here I'm creating some corners to support the circuit board, and I just have to create the shape and change the size and place them inside the box. Now the difficulty is to align them so that they actually touch all the borders, the corners. I actually made a mistake and I have a 1 millimeter gap on one of those corners. But it does work. I'll pay more attention next time. You can change the color, you can make it transparent, you can do a lot of interesting things. Next, what I'm going to do is export the file. Actually, I have to merge everything, just like so. And now I have a solid box, and those elements are not separated anymore. What I do now is that I'm going to export it, and so it's going to make an STL file. That's the file format that I can actually also send to another program then, which is called Cora, C-O-R-A, I believe. And but that's to set up the parameters for the 3D printers. Here I'm finishing up with the fourth corner, again to support the circuit board. And next I'm ready to actually export and save the file. So let's have a look at that. Now it's not very intuitive, and you better watch some videos to do this. Okay, exporting, and I'll save it, and the file will be basically ready to send for the printer, which I'm going to do at work. This is the Cura program I told you about. Actually, it's spelled C-U-R-A, which is used to set up the parameters for the printer. And I have to say a big thank you to Jan for setting that up for me. He actually put a little border around the case so that it sticks better to the glass. Now, this is not a 100% density print. It's actually a honeycomb. It's not really solid. It's not less strong per se, but it does save on plastic and it's much faster. This actually took about 4 hours to print, so you can't be in a hurry. There's a lot of parameters you can set, like melting temperature for the nozzle, for the plastic and things like that. I'm not really familiar with them. It's going to be quite a journey, but it's so interesting. You can see the honeycomb here, you can see the corners, and you can actually see that they're kind of hollow. And here's my design being printed. That's just the beginning, but I already have one here, and it looks pretty good actually. I think I messed up one of the corners that doesn't quite touch the edge of the box, but that's just for the circuit board, a support for the circuit board. And that's it, just a box. I will drill the holes that I need. I could have had the holes printed in the design, but I didn't want to bother with that yet. That was my first try, so I think I'm pretty happy with it. So I brought the box home and let's see how it fits. And it's almost perfect. I could have even reduced the tolerances and it would have been fine. I wasn't quite sure how precise this was going to be, but I'm very impressed with the 3D printing. And I definitely want to get a 3D printer. Everybody's suggesting that I get the Under 3, and I think that's what I'm going to do. First mission is of course to drain a battery pack. Now this one is at 12.3 volts because I like to leave my batteries charged. So I have a light bulb here. One of the filaments is broken, so I'm going to use the other one to drain the pack. Remember me mentioning masking tape? Yeah, endless uses, guys. It's so useful. I'm just going to solder the wires on. So while this is going on, well, I have to keep an eye on the voltmeter because I don't want the voltage to go below 10 volts. It's 3 volts minimum per cell, so after that you risk damaging a cell. So I think 10 volts will be a good lower limit. While this is going on, I just need to drill the box now. So the pin comes just about here. I just have to mark that as precisely as I can. The outside of a DC plug is about 5.5 millimeters. So let's start with 6. Well, it's not precisely centered, but it's good enough that it actually works. I put 3 batteries in it, 18650 cells, just to test the voltage output. There is a little button here to check the voltage, and you can see the LEDs right below my thumb, and it's full. The batteries are full. Something that I have noticed though that really puzzles me is that the output voltage seems to be only 2.2 volts. And I think there might be, you might have to actually plug in the solar panel to trigger the circuit. I hope so. I'm not quite sure. That would be a problem though, because I'm not intending to use this my radios while I'm charging the batteries. Actually, none of the output ports are giving me 12 volts. They all give me 0.5, 0.6. And that's very upsetting. Not only that, but those wire clipping things actually don't work. You can't attach wire there. It just doesn't stay. I've even tried with a bit of solder, which is much thinner, and you just can't get it in. Alright, I found the output I wanted, and it's not these connectors. They don't work for me. I don't know why. But here on the circuit boards there are holes, and bingo! 12 volt output. Actually, you get the third cell here, 8.10, and first cell 4.0. So total voltage is 12.17 volts. Now the great thing is that those holes actually go through the circuit board. So I just have to solder my wires here, and that's it. No need to drill more holes in the box. I have to solder very thin wires, but I don't really care because they're never going to see more than 700-800 milliamps. Alright, it is time to glue the thing in, and I think I came up with a pretty good idea for the electrical connection, but right now I'm just going to mix a little bit of epoxy, and that's just for the corners. My idea is actually to use Anderson power poles and glue them to the whole assembly, so the wires don't have to be pulled, or they won't break, they won't actually move. Let's make sure I put the hole in the right spot. And I'll just let that set. For the whole outside of the box, I'm going to use hot glue. I'm going to make a neat little bead. More epoxy for the Anderson power poles. It's a bit too much. That even further solidifies the connection between the box and the battery holder. And I'll finish up by thoroughly gluing, hot gluing the connectors in here with the wires. I think I will redesign the box with an edge here, so that the Anderson power poles can be glued in and secured much better, and put that actually in the 3D printed design. Well, it might not be the prettiest, but it will do the trick. Batteries here are discharged to 10.4 volts, so I'm sure by the time I clear up all this mess, we should be ready for a charging test. 10 volts, I think we're good to go. I'm going to place those batteries in the Mppt Charger and we'll plug them in the panel. Now there is no direct sunlight here. Oh, and you can see my J-pole antenna for 2 meters in passing. I will leave my panel on the table and the Mppt chargers and 18650 cells here for charging. Let's check the voltage now. Well, apparently performance with no direct sunlight isn't that great. 3.55, 3.54, 42, 3.55. So balancing is pretty good, I'd say. Here's the panel voltage in these conditions. So it's not at the 20 volts that I was hoping for. Of course, there is not enough sun for that, so that's normal. I also checked earlier when I started and it was about the same, 15.5 volts. So let's simulate that with a power supply and see what kind of current we get. So now the charger is on a power supply and I have about the same voltage as I had on the panel, 15.4 volts. And it's happily charging at more than 1 amp. Those batteries should have been fully charged within those 5 hours, so which means that the panel isn't giving up enough current. Or as soon as you add the load of the charger, the voltage drops and the charger stops working basically. At the maximum voltage of the power supply, which is 16.35 volts, the charger is still pulling 1 amp. So it doesn't really matter. As long as you have about 14 volts input, the charger is going to charge. Now you're probably wondering, is this charger RF quiet? Meaning, will it cause noise in the radio? And there is no better radio than the Elecraft K1 to answer that question. Right now it's on the power supply, and I'll leave the volume in the same spot and switch to the Mppt charger. Now the K1 is being powered by the solar charger, which is being powered by the power supply I had on before. And I'm not noticing any increase in noise or any weird RF noises. Good news! So with no direct sunlight, the results are not very promising. And I can't say I'm surprised. That's where the money goes. It's producing current in low sunlight. I would bet that on a pretty sunny day with the panel oriented directly towards the sun, the charger would be on most of the time, if not 100% of the time, and pulling 1 amp with no problem. But the thing is, it's not always sunny. In the winter, it would take 20 hours to charge those batteries. Will you stay long enough in one place to charge your batteries? That's another question. Which begs the question, is it a good idea to save money on solar power? Because when you need current, you need it. You can have the best radio in the world. If you can't power them,
they're useless. So why am I not willing to spend as much money on a solar charging solution as on a good radio? The answer is simple. My passion is radio, it's not solar power. So I'm not being objective in my choices here. I have to be honest with myself, and if I want performance, I have to pay for it. I will check the panel again, of course, in better conditions, but I'm pretty disappointed by the performance in low light. And my next panel will probably cost 3 or 4 times as much as this one, but live and learn. The Wondom charger, though, I'm pretty happy with, and actually I might buy a couple more. Have a good one.